All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Critical Conversations. Today, I am thrilled to have Carrie Lingenfelter of Heart to Heart podcast. She is here to help us talk about parenting mindfully, being conscious about how we're choosing to parent, and where we have decided to start today is real juicy. I'm so excited to ask this first question. But before I do that, I want to say thank you to everyone who's showing up, listening to Critical Conversations, diving in, sending feedback, all the things. Thank you so much. Carrie, I'm going to toss it over to you. What do you want people to know just in that brief introduction before we dive into our conversation?
I guess it's all about connecting with ourselves, connecting with our kids, connecting with our partner, and knowing we're not alone out there.
Yeah, amazing. I mean, I think the validation of not knowing you're not alone, is so important. So the first question I have this morning for Carrie, I'm reading it off of, you actually brought this question to me, which I really appreciate so much. But this one really stood out to me because I think it's something not only have I dealt with personally, but I know that many of my clients are facing. So the question is, what do parts of our childhood have to do with how we parent now?
Yes. And I love this question because I think it's really come up for me. It's actually part of why I started the podcast. It's looking at things that may bubble up for us as our kids are going through different eras in their lives. And sometimes using self-reflection and intuition, things that bubble up for us to see, why is my child's behavior or my child's the things they're saying, why does that affect me so much? Why do I feel insecure in that? Why do I feel upset, angry? What is it about me and my childhood and pieces that could have not ever been worked on that need to be healed? Also, those pieces that have been coming up for me and things that have happened in my background. So I have a 6-year-old daughter and a 9-year-old son, and they came, I often use the terms highly sensitive, spirited, and gifted. They came into the world wanting to run and wanting to connect and wanting to understand the world. So that intensity that brought to me as a very calm type of person has just been all this time for self-reflection, and it's really helped me to have almost this process of spiritual awakening. So I'm now looking to embrace the chaos, embrace some of the intensity, and learn about what those pieces are for myself, what those pieces are for my kids, my husband, what comes up for him. We're on this journey together. I'm really lucky because my husband and I co-parent, we co-team, and we grow together and grow in our own ways. We really help reflect on each other in those pieces.
That's amazing. I want to start there and ask the question, was your relationship always like that, or did you have to work to get there?
It's an awesome question because my husband and I, we met when we were older. We were 27. We got married when we were 30. And so we were both a little bit older. We had both been to grad school and had way too many degrees. And we thought we knew everything in life, but we had both worked on our own selves socially, emotionally, physically, and spiritually before we met each other. So we were at these powerful places for ourselves, and we thought we were ready to conquer parenthood and having a family. And there were times where it did drive a wedge as we were learning about ourselves and learning about what kind of parents we wanted to be. So we definitely had moments where we did have to reconnect and realign. And it wasn't like a Hallmark movie at all. There were slam door moments. There were real times. It was not like a warm filter on my Instagram feed. It was real. It was raw. And we definitely went to therapy ourselves and learned how to reconnect. But a lot of it was self-motivated, self-driven. And spirituality played a big piece in it because there's those pieces of mindful growth and connection and craving more.
Yeah. Well, and I think, you hit the nail on the head. I think when you're in a relationship, when you have very spirited children or just, children who, I don't think it matters. Children suck the life out of you, period, right? No matter what they
Yes.
need, they take a lot of your energy. And so I
Yes.
think if you aren't in a partnership where you're both understanding that you're going to have a little bit less for each other and you're very intentional about that reconnection, it's really hard to have that family, move forward in a really positive, productive way. So what you said, it takes two growth-minded people, to come to the table, to have those tough conversations, even after you slam the door, you yell at each other or whatever it is, however you fight. John and Julie Gottman, they're my favorite. They always say, fight fair, fight fair, because fighting often helps you uncover. So I really appreciate you sharing that, because I think a lot of times when I bring experts on the podcast, it's like they're so connected to their work. And I like to immediately break down that barrier of like, okay, don't worry, guys, Carrie's still a real human. She had real life experiences to get to where she is. So you mentioned self-reflection in answering this initial question. And I'm curious, what came up for you in that self-reflection? You mentioned that you were a very like kind of calm, type of person, and your kids were like off to the races. So how did you recognize that you needed to self-reflect? Like, how did that journey start?
Yeah. And I realized I was calm on the outside. I was not calm on the inside. And I had no clue that was going on, right? I always thought like everybody tells me, you're so calm and I bet you never have your moments. I bet you never explode. I'm like, sure, totally. No, really. It's like duck on the water. I don't know if you've heard that saying, like calm on the top, paddling like hell underneath. That's me in life. And I didn't realize that was going on in my mind. Luckily I have my mom and my grandma. My grandmother is Argentinian. And so luckily I had this spiritual pieces in my life. I was raised spiritual. You forget all of that when you're in your 20s and you think you know everything. So where I was going with that was, it took me a minute to reconnect. It took me, there was a moment where I had 85 sleep gadgets for my son, my 9-year-old. I was in a closet. I'm joking with 85, but I was in a closet. It was, I was dark during the day, had to have the bouncy ball. We're on the ball. He's in his sleep gadgets with his binky looking up at me. And I'm like, I've got to get you down. There's a sleep schedule. We've got to get on this sleep schedule. We have to maintain it. And he looked me in the eyes and I looked in these big blue eyes he had. And I was like, what are you doing? Like, drop all of this, step out of this box of perfection of what you think you have to do and all of these things you have to do to be the perfect parent, to raise the perfect child that gets into the perfect school and is so perfectly happy, right? So I luckily had my mom and my grandma and some spiritual friends that said, like, drop the baby books, burn the baby books, like get rid of those. Those are fear driven and they're causing this fear in you. And look at some of these spiritual pieces. I studied Reiki for myself, which helped me to further connect and further understand how to hear my heart, how to connect with my kid, to follow him in his sleep needs, in his nursing needs, and all of these pieces. I was actually recently talking to my husband and he said, you knew our son couldn't handle gluten. How did you realize that from the get-go? And I was like, I had no evidence. I'm married to an engineer who wanted the evidence, but I still stood up and said, I feel it in my heart. I don't know why. He's not supposed to have gluten. And when he was 12 months old, he ate gluten and we watched the eczema go up his back. And he was like, how did you know? And he got his first ear infection. My husband's like, how did you know? He still asks me, my son's going to be turning 10, like 10 years later. How'd you know? I just had this connection. And as I started to understand these pieces of myself and these connections and connect more, I started to realize, wow, your monkey mind is, that's the term I use with my kids. Your monkey mind is racing. You're washing dishes and it's going. Like, chill out, focus on the water, focus on the dish soap, focus on the motion, focus on what it feels like in your hands. And I started to use some of these mindful pieces, started to stop those cycles. And that was part of the self-reflection, is understanding what my monkey mind looked like, understanding how to further connect for myself. What modality helped me? There's so many modalities out there, self-care, mindful movement, all of these pieces, right? Spirituality, bringing these into our self-reflection journey. Reiki was something that helped me to further connect and get into that routine and that connection when I would meditate. So that's a long answer.
I love it. No, I love it. So what I'm hearing, and I want you to tell me, because you've been doing, this really hyper-focused heart-to-heart parenting. Yeah. You mentioned ditch the baby books. They're fear-driven. And it's actually hysterical because one of my really good friends just had her first baby, and she had a terrible traumatic, went into labor 6 weeks early, disaster of a situation. And she has a touch of this, I gotta be perfect, but she also has this touch of, I see you and I know what's up. I know what you need kind of a thing.
Beautiful.
Is there, in my head right now, I'm like, are 90% of parents just unregulated and afraid because they're not slowing down enough to connect with themselves, and they're ingesting all this information about your kid has to sleep with this and it has to be this and don't do this and do this and don't do, it's like, are we just as a society unregulated and afraid?
Yeah. Yeah. There's so much. And I can give you an example. So I had the picture for perfect baby shower where we all connect. We had this great baby shower. It felt very plastic looking back, but it was wonderful. It was what I needed in that time with my first birth. And it was hard. We did a labor and delivery through the hospital. So it was very fear driven. I read what to expect when expecting. I had all of these things of what I thought it had to be. And so we went into that, and that was my hardest labor and delivery, but looking back, it should have been the easiest.
Yeah.
That child was on time. My second baby, I had a girlfriend, this was a psychologist, and she handed me this book. It was Birthing from Within, which, it is an extreme version, whereas I like to say, let's not go to the extremes, sure, right? Let's connect to ourselves and see what we need. But anyway, it taught me how to empower myself. It taught my husband how to empower me. It taught how to connect between the two of us. And we had all of these empowering pieces. We had a doula. We had learned the Birthing from Within with. We went into that labor and delivery. My daughter was a month early. She was going to have to go into the NICU. I was lucky to have a natural birth. We went into that, had everything. It was smooth. She came. I got to hold her in my chest. Then she had to go to the NICU. My husband felt empowered enough. He talked the nurse into bringing her back so I could nurse her and connect with her. And then she went back into the NICU. But I walked down with my IV bag. I was empowered, and I said, I'm ready to nurse her again. I'm here. I'm not going to leave her side. And I felt fine. That was the harder labor and delivery, but we were so empowered. We were so in that mindset. I had a mother's spiritual connection, a mother's blessing before my daughter was born. A week later, she was born. And it's part of those mindsets of understanding what that box is, where we need to be. Do we step outside of the box? Sometimes we can be in the box, I guess, like birthday parties, maybe. I always say, speaking of birthday parties, our kids are not born with expectations. We create them.
Yeah.
So if we're having that perfect box for them and we're raising them in that box of here's how I do this perfectly, we're placing those expectations on our kids, whether we know it or not. Like I'm doing this perfect. I'm modeling perfection. I'm modeling what it looks like to be, it makes my shoulders want to hunch up as I'm talking about this energy.
I'm like, whoa, I gotta shake this up.
Loosen it up. Yeah. Yes. Let's model for our kids what it looks like to be authentic. Yeah. Let's model for our kids what it looks like to break free, to follow our passions, to change directions when, hey, I don't want to be a teacher anymore, or I can't be a speech therapist. Now I feel drawn to this new piece. It's totally new territory, but I'm going to take a chance and try something different.
Yeah.
So we're modeling that for our kids too. They're watching us and they're sponges.
Yeah. Yeah. I just interviewed a woman named Belinda, and she has a movement here in Oregon, and it's called Perfect Child. And her whole concept is your child came here perfect. They're just as they need to be. Don't let the world get its hands on them. You know, your job is to learn from your child and support your child, right? And so that just mirrors what you said. Our kids are not born with expectations. We create them. And I see this in my own way. You know, when I was raising Ruby, it's like I very much was raised in that, like, you know, you don't leave the house unless you look a certain way and you say certain things and you do certain things, right? Like very prim and proper. And that pendulum swung hard for my daughter Ruby. And I was like, whatever you want to wear, whatever you like, be you, like total empowerment. And it's interesting because watching her enter kindergarten that way, where it was like, I'm so cool, I can wear whatever I want, to now, you know, she's in 5th grade, and I can see the glimmer of that going, like it's less of a bright light, it's more of a glimmer. And it's because she's starting to learn from her peers, right? And there's judgments happening and expectations are being created. And so, you know, my job as her mother is to empower her that it really doesn't matter what other people think. How do you feel? How do you feel in your body about your choices, about what you like to read, about the food that you know, it's like, she used to eat kale and all these delicious, healthy things until she freaking got all these friends and started going to sleepovers and everybody's having grilled cheese and mac and cheese. And my husband and I are like, what the heck happened? But, you know, it's like our job is to really just hold space for her finding her own path. You know, she's come back to broccoli, thank God. She's feeling more empowered in certain things. So, I mean, I always say we live in a 3D world, but we are spiritual beings. And because we live in this 3D world, we do have to play the systems that are out there. But how do we as parents hold on to that heart-to-heart connection while we're trying to fit into this 3D system?
Yeah. Family dinners. It's huge, right? That's where I would love to start. I just actually shared a post today and I showed my family table. I took an old table, refinished it, and put it back together. And it's the foundation of amazing conversations, right? Reflective conversations. How do you feel when you eat food like that? Beige food. When did we become the beige family?
Yeah.
No?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Right. Encouraging them to be themselves and also modeling that authentic version of yourself. I had mentioned that before. And I watched that episode with Belinda and I loved it, by the way. When we talk about that authentic pieces and staying conscious, I like to say children are born conscious. They're seeking the spiritual pieces. They're asking questions. They're connecting with you. They're watching you. They're connecting with nature. They're looking to grow in those ways. And so we're laying those foundations. And as I once heard, when they're around your daughter's age, they're starting to seek things outside of their parents, right? And also my friend had mentioned other parents' friends are who they often will turn to because they're also looking to other adults.
Yep.
So trying to have that community for yourself where you have like-minded people is so amazing too, right? When they're turning to others and they don't want to listen to mom and dad as much. But yes, asking those reflective questions and connecting and staying connected, modeling those pieces, modeling making mistakes in front of them because they're doing the trial and error at that age, and modeling picking yourself up. Also modeling keeping those positive mindsets. It's raining outside. I'm still going to pack the sunscreen and we're going to take that with us. Or and teaching that to your kids. I now have my 6-year-old who comes up to me and says, "Mom, you can work through those feelings, but then I want you to picture what you're wanting to see the change." And I'm like, wow, she's listening. So continuing to model those and maybe not do it in the advice way that I would give to my 6-year-old who is still open to advice, but an 11-year-old I know is working to hear the advice from their friends, right?
Right.
But modeling it in your version and talking about fall downs that you've had, talking about how you keep going. Also having that spiritual foundation, if you're able to have that, even if it's hiking on the weekends and talking about a journey that maybe a challenge that you had and overcame, when you feel like your child is energetically there,
Yeah.
when your child is energetically open to connecting in that way.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think one of the pieces that I think we've done a good job at as a family is being really honest and communicating. We've always maybe overshared, but I really think that has given our daughter this muscle of like, oh, it's okay to be vulnerable. Like, it's okay for dad to cry. It's okay for mom to cry. It's okay for us to be sad as a family, and not just hiding, oh, we failed and that's why we're crying, or, oh, we're upset, something happened and this is what happened. I think our willingness to kind of share in what we're going through has really created I would say we're like the three amigos. We're really strong unit together as a family because there's no hidden secrets. It's like, hey, I'm at we say I'm at capacity all the time. So if I had a long day, I planned to make dinner, but I hit my capacity at 3, I'm going to call my husband. I'm going to say, I'm at capacity. Do you want to order in or go out? Or maybe I will be like, you have to cook or whatever. Right. And it's like that she's witnessing us tackle life as a unit. And I think that a lot of parents hide that part because they're afraid that their kids shouldn't know. And I'm like, yeah, but when they're in the care of your home, that's the safest place for them to fall on their face and learn and understand that life isn't always beautiful and perfect, and that we are going to trip and we're going to get wet and we're going to fall and we're going to get hurt. Right. What are your thoughts as far as, when you're talking through staying this heart to heart, what are you practicing?
Yeah. And I love what you're talking about showing them these pieces and showing them how you get through it, right? It's now that we're wanting them to make mistakes. We don't want to be the super helicopter parent that was developed in the early 2000s, right? I feel like it was helicopter parent early 2000s now, and then it slowly molded into the super helicopter parent. I can't let anything happen to them. I have to protect them. But we want them to make the mistakes. We want them to lose at a soccer game and learn how to process it, learn how to deal with it, cry. It's okay. That's part. It's sticky and it's ucky sometimes as a parent. There's some time for self-reflection. Why is that hard for me?
Yeah.
When they're crying, why is that hard? But yes, helping them learn to deal with those pieces, because if they're trying to be the perfect version and they're trying to hold it in, think of those onion layers of protection that they're putting on themselves as they're going through those processes if they're not working through that. And as we're putting those onion layers of protection on, that's going to keep us farther from being a conscious adult.
Right.
We're going to have to then be that parent one day, or say they've grown up with all those layers. I put on those layers. I was a highly sensitive kid. I wasn't allowed to be highly sensitive at times. Society made that. My parents did without knowing it. That's part of how I grew up. And so I had those pieces, right? And as I've slowly and healed through those pieces, they've come off. I'm now better able to connect with who I truly am, who I authentically am, go through those spiritual pieces, those spiritual awakenings. It's now easier to connect. So if our kids can grow into these adults and not have as many of those layers as they're going through and becoming themselves, they'll be able to hear their hearts and choosing what they want to do in life. They'll be able to connect and follow the path less taken without feeling scared. They'll be empowered.
Yeah.
So I love what you're doing. I love the connections you're making and guiding them and showing them how to be authentic, how to be the true version of themselves. And also looking for pieces that our children love when they're young. This is kind of a random tangent with it, but you guys, you really were telling me about your background and how you followed your passion. You're showing your child that. We're showing them how to follow their passions.
Yeah.
So many times we were trying to be perfect. I was trying to be perfect growing up in the 90s and thought I had to do these perfect things. And looking back, I'm like, why did I even end up being a teacher? I am not outgoing. I don't even know how I got there. I am a very shy person, highly sensitive. Like, it was a lot for me. So yeah, it's trying to people please.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So on a scale of like 1 to 10, 10 being the most important, what you're talking about is really healing of the self.
Yeah,
so on a scale of 1 to 10 for the mom, the dad, the future wannabe parent, the current parent, how important is it that they take time to slow down and heal themselves and do this work for themselves?
That's a 10, right? That's a 10. But it's hard. That's a gift, being able to do that. We're busy moms and dads. It's freaking hard to raise your kids right now.
Yeah.
Things are expensive. Houses are expensive. Food's expensive. I live in an area where we don't even have as many kids moving in because it's gotten so expensive. It's like, where are all the young families? Our schools are declining in numbers where I live. And it's hard. Everybody's a dual income. You can't afford to live in this area. So it's having that time to self-reflect, having that time to have self-care, which is like the buzzword right now, right? Self-care. But who has time for it? But these things that you are saying, like, grab food when you can. My husband and I used to think when we first became parents that we had to do everything together. Like, the weekends are always family time, 100% family time.
No.
And we were like, whoa, what are we doing? This is crazy. This is the box of parent we thought we needed. And so we now do switch time where, like, we each get time to ourselves, where I do refinishing furniture sometimes. My husband does woodworking. So these moments where you can work on yourself and find somebody to help you with some of the inner child work if you're having a hard time doing it on your own. It's definitely like lifting weights. So as I have continued down this journey and realize some of the energy I'm putting onto my kids is oftentimes things that I didn't heal in my childhood, or I'll react to somebody outside of our household. And I'm like, why did I react like that? And now that I've been doing all these self-reflection pieces, journaling, working with people, counselors, it comes up faster. And as you remove these layers of protection for yourself, you can hear, why did that happen? Why does this feel sticky, icky in my body? And you work on those mind-body connection experiences, I think is a huge piece. That's a piece you can teach your kids too, is that mind-body connection. That'd be great for your daughter. Yeah.
Well, and I think, this is my personal perspective on it, is if you want what's best for your kid, you'll figure it out, and you'll figure out how to transform yourself, even if it's just little. Like, my whole practice is based on sustainable habits, because you're right. People are busy. Both parents are working more often than not nowadays. And if and if both parents aren't working, the other one's probably doing all the at-home CEO stuff, taking care of the entire house, which, hello, like, there are full-time people cleaning houses and doing laundry and cooking for people. So it is a full-time job. So I think you have to find the time and space for yourself. And it can be little micro moments that you stack up over time. It's waking up a little bit early to give yourself a little bit of alone time to meditate or journal or go on a walk or listen to a personal development book or podcast, or, taking your lunch hour and doing the same types of practices. It's finding 15 minutes here and there in every day. 15 minutes before you go to bed, can you give yourself a minute to just like breathe and focus on your breath? And I think you mentioned, like, as I'm washing the dishes, can that be a meditative moment where I'm focusing on the water, I'm focusing on the feeling in my hand, right? Anytime we can pull back into our 5 senses, what am I seeing? What am I smelling? What am I tasting? Touch. And anytime you can do that, what am I hearing? It really pulls you into the present moment. And that's practicing mindfulness, which is a way of meditation, right? And so I think it is a 10 out of 10 important. And there are ways for you to find it. And I love what you said too, where you take time on the weekends to have your independence. It's so important. The family time is important, but you don't need all of those 48 hours on Saturday and Sunday to be together. It actually will likely be more beneficial if mom gets 2 to 3 hours outside of the house. She's probably going to be a lot more fun for the rest of those 45 hours, right? And so giving breaks with your partner and having that tag team of like, I need a night out. I need to go to yoga. I need to go on a hike, whatever it is, making space for yourself. And it doesn't have to cost money. You don't necessarily have to invest in a coach or invest in therapy. You can start creating habits for yourself. And like you said, it's the awareness, self-reflection. Oh, my kid did this and it really made me angry. Why did that make me angry? Oh, my kid was really upset. Why did that make me upset? Like, what does that mean? What am I making that mean about me? You mentioned that you had a meditation that you offer. I want to hear more about this because it sounded really intriguing to me.
Yeah, I created a guided meditation. I felt drawn to it that parents could use it. It's kind of a process that I used with myself for figuring out I wanted to do Heart to Heart Parents podcast. I realized I felt lonely in raising my kids, and it was a piece that I had passion in myself for. So I created this guided meditation to help parents reconnect with themselves and connect to a passion that they may have shelved while they were raising their kids. And your kid doesn't have to be 18. It doesn't have to be the end of raising your kids, but it really is a piece of the self journey and discovering these passions you may have shelved for the time being.
I love it. I really love it. Have you heard of Eve Bronsky and Fair Play? I'm just curious.
No.
Okay. I wanted to bring this up just because I know not everyone is blessed with a partner who's, open to sharing roles in the home. Eve Bronsky wrote a book. It's called Fair Play. And for anyone who is in a situation where they're in maybe what you would consider a more traditional household where the woman takes care of everything at home and the man does nothing. But in Eve Bronsky's case, both her and her husband were working. And she was like, wait a minute, we're both working now. These traditional roles were created back in the day when women weren't working. But now women are working and we're still shouldering 90% of the household duties. It's a great book, really insightful, really helpful. And, for anyone who's kind of struggling to get their partner on board with being more helpful for giving time on the weekends so that you can have some time to yourself, I highly recommend that book. And I just wanted to give that little plug there just in case there's listeners who are struggling. You mentioned neurodivergent, and I feel like you have a good little tangent to share kind of our last thoughts here.
Yeah. So neurodivergence in our family, as we have gone on that journey, it's been a process for us. Even as an educator, it was pretty hard for us to go through. We felt really alone. We felt like, in my case, our kids are very put together outside of the house, but once we shut the doors, we have a lot go on. And so I really encourage people raising neurodiverse kids to connect with others going through it. Finding your community has been so helpful. And Heart to Heart Parents, we have that piece of us that's in it, raising kids and giving ideas with mindful tools that have really helped my kids, have helped me, helped my husband, just to connect with ourselves and to feel empowered. Also, it's helped my kids. They're really highly sensitive kids, so that can feel hard in the society that I'm raising them in. So it's helped them to feel empowered. My son now talks about how highly sensitive really is a superpower because you can smell better. Your brain sometimes thinks faster, so you can learn material faster. So we really just empowered our 2 kids to think of it as a superpower.
Oh my God, I love that. Your kids sound amazing, Carrie.
Thank you.
Yeah. Where is it that people can find you? I know you have a podcast. Are you on all listening platforms?
Yes, we are. Heart to Heart Parents podcast. It's on all listening platforms. And then we have hearttoheartlife.com is our website. It has the freebie in there for the guided meditation. And also I'm on all the Instagram. I like to post like daily tips and sometimes some fun stuff. Heart to Heart Parents podcast on Instagram.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for coming on this show. I really appreciate it. And I really hope, whoever's listening, you just take an extra second for yourself, find that reflection moment, because I've witnessed it where kids really want to connect with you, but if you're not connected to yourself, it can be really challenging.
Yep, for sure.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Karissa, for having me today.
You're welcome. All right. We'll see everyone on the next Critical Conversation.